I tested positive in September 26, 2008. I did sex work, guilty as charged. And there was a time in my life where that's the only way that I could survive. And with doing sex work, I played it smart. But when I was in a monogamous relationship, that's where I thought that I was playing it smart. And that's where the rug got pulled under me. I couldn't believe that my partner cheated on me, and that's how I had he had transmitted the virus. And my mother, being the oldest of four daughters and being the one taking care of my grandmother on her deathbed, she had a lot on her shoulders already. And so really, really, I didn't want to have to tell her at that time. But I felt like I needed to because I was upset, I was angry, and I didn't know what I was going to do. So I had talked to her and I just said, I have something I have to tell you. And she just broke down crying and she just hugged me. And she said, no, my son. She goes, I can't. She goes, no. I just said, I'm sorry. I'm sorry and I don't know what to do. I decided I was going to tell my immediate family, and the rest, nobody else needed to know. Except I just didn't tell my second oldest brother because we've had a really rough upbringing, and because we've bucked heads so much that I just felt that it wasn't a good time to tell him. But when he did find out, he was hurt because he had said, no matter what we've been through, I'm always gonna love you. And I had a pretty rough upbringing. We don't talk, my family, we didn't say I love you. We didn't hug and kiss. My mother was a single parent raising 3 kids. And so we never experienced love in our house. And I just didn't want to shame my family no more. I was so afraid of people knowing my dirty secret. I always called it my dirty secret, because nobody could ever find out about my secret. The girls on the street will love to tell other people about your status, especially if you're in the sex work industry. Our island is so small, and with our island being small, everybody knows everybody. Everybody knows their business and knows what's going on. So really, to disclose anything and to keep it like on a hush-hush basis, it's not really a reality. Somebody's gonna find out some way somehow, and so I think that's where it could be a stumbling block for some of our girls, where they choose to stay away, where they choose not to get tested, because especially for our working girls, because if they find out their status, that could destroy them. That could destroy their form of making a living. So trans women get into sex work. Some of them do. A lot of them are not document ready. They don't have a state ID. They don't have a social security. They don't even have an address to have it mailed. A lot of them can't go home. A lot of them were out there and didn't finish school. So there's a lot of skill sets that are lost. And that's the form to survive. That's the form for them to eat. It's a form for them to have a roof over their head wherever they're staying. Most of the time, they're facing too many disparities, and a lot of it is shame and stigma. When it comes to being trans, being Native Hawaiian and trans, we came from a place where we were revered. In Hawaiian royalty, we sat as the chief's truth sayer. We were the connection between the male and the female. I guess you could say when colonialism had came in, the beliefs and the thoughts were influenced, and they had changed the way that we had looked at things. And there was that time where we were looked down upon. And I think now, living trans in Hawaii now, we have been able to evolve and to thrive, and we've been able to sit back in the seats that we once sat before. I had felt out of care. I suffered from depression. I had a substance abuse issue. I never thought I was going to get my confidence back. I lived in fear. And I just did not think that I was going to be able to pick myself up. So I kind of checked out. And eventually, it brought me to a place where I had like 21 white blood cells, and I had walking pneumonia and thrush in my mouth. And a girlfriend, a close colleague of mine who I grew up with, had just told me to fight. You have to fight. So I was able to still continue to take the same meds, and there was no resistance. And so I had fell back into care, but due to a substance abuse issue and the lifestyle that I was living, I ended up getting incarcerated. I was in jail for a year and a half. I did about 6 months at every time, so they would let me out every 6 months. But being in there, being out, every time they let me out, I didn't stay out for more than like a month, and I was right back in. Being behind bars, your freedom is stripped from you, your humanity is stripped from you. So things like sex still goes on in jails. Uh, Girls like me become very popular when we come to jail. For somebody being incarcerated, it becomes a survival skill. And for somebody who's done sex work, it becomes second nature. So we do what we do in order to survive. I already had knew my status when I was incarcerated. And so to meet the needs of others while being behind bars sometimes would have to consist of using a rubber glove. And I know that sounds kind of funny, but you make do and you figure out you can figure out how it works. But that's the only form of protection you could use unless it was unprotected. And I've seen people have unprotected sex in jail before. You never talk about HIV. I've seen a friend of mine who had HIV and was open about their status and what they went through in jail. And all I could think about was like, don't you dare tell my secret, my dirty secret. Because it was horrible. I watched her go through a lot. But to protect my own self, I said nothing. Eventually, I had gotten out of that through treatment. I was able to kind of somewhat pick up my life and get it back together again. And then I got into this program called POP. And it was showing me that how I could be the best advocate for myself because only I knew exactly what I needed. Only I knew what I was feeling at that moment of my diagnosis, of finding out my status, and what did I need and what was lacking in my life, and how I could help other people to do it. And when I looked at that, it was still on that level of I could do this, but that fear factor of stigma still lingered. So I went on my first trip. We went to a Positive Women's Network Women's Summit, and that was the first year that they had brought cisgender women and trans women together. And so I got to experience and meet other people who were living with the same status as myself and see how that they were being the voice for their community, being the voice for people who could not speak for themselves. And it inspired me, and it told me that I could do this. I could do this, and I could make a difference within my community. I had started my AIDS activism, my advocacy, I would say about 3 years ago. I have learned a lot. And when I first had gotten my diagnosis, I thought I knew everything. But as I stepped into this realm and I stepped into a new door and I seen how level of care is created and how we try to meet those needs of those disparities, it's a lot different. And I have gone definitely from here to up here. And all I had to do was just make myself available. So my journey is not finished. My story is not finished. And only God knows where it's going to go. But I'm not done yet.